So just gone by was the vetting of the Minister Designate for Youth and Youth Development, the George Opare Ado Esquire. And we will still be in Parliament to bring you all the other vetting that will be coming off tomorrow and the subsequent days. This is where you get to hear all of the things that are happening in Parliament. But also today, there's a lot of happenings at the corridors of power and at the presidency. The president has been speaking. He says we have averted the looming threat of a power crisis. That's an assurance from President John Dramani Mahama as he swore in the first batch of 6 ministers at the Jubilee House. Speaking during the ceremony, he stated that fuel deliveries to the thermal plant in the east have begun ahead of the planned maintenance of the West African gas pipeline project. Some days ago, the Minister for Energy and Green Transition, John Jenapo, warned of a serious energy crisis, citing insufficient fuel stocks for power generation. He attributed this to the failure of the Akufo-Addo-led government to make the necessary fuel procurement, despite repeated warnings and calls for action. However, President John Dramani Mahama has assured the nation that the looming power crisis has now been averted.
That I will uphold the sovereignty and integrity of Ghana.
The 6 ministers sworn in by President John Mahama were the Finance Minister, Minister for Energy and Green Transition, Attorney General and Minister for Justice, Minister for Education Haruna Idrisu, Minister for Food and Agriculture, and Minister for Roads and Highways Kwame Agboja. They were presented with the instrument of office after taking the oath of office. In his speech, John Mahama said the government has averted the looming threat of a power crisis.
Through determined efforts, I can report that we have now averted the looming threat of power outages. And began delivering fuel to the thermal plants in the east in advance of the shutdown of the West African gas pipeline. And Honorable Jenapo, I want to congratulate you for working very hard.
President further noted that similar timely interventions have ensured that short-term measures are in place guaranteeing an adequate food supply for senior high schools.
Similar timely interventions have been necessary in areas such as education, where an acute food shortage was a major problem when schools were ordered to reopen on 3rd January. We have put in short-term measures to ensure that our children have adequate food so that they can go ahead with their learning. These are short-term measures and will help to keep our children in school, even as we strategize on streamlining the supply of food to schools and pay off arrears that are owed to schools, some dating from as far back as 2021.
President John Mahama urged the new ministers to serve with humility, emphasizing that the government will not tolerate arrogance or disrespect towards the electorate.
I therefore charge you to serve in humility and candor, always remembering that we serve at the pleasure of the Ghanaian people, and that the authority we exercise emanates from them. We must exhibit tolerance for their views and work to meet their aspirations. This government will not tolerate arrogance or disrespect for the people who elected us into office.
He touched on the issue of asset declaration, stating that timelines will be introduced for compliance.
We must be transparent and fair in all our dealings. The anti-corruption institutions will be empowered to investigate and deal with any appointee who falls foul of the law. I expect all of you to begin the process of declaring your assets. The Chief of Staff will announce the cutoff date by which time all eligible appointees should have deposited their assets declaration forms with the Auditor General.
The Finance Minister, Kasil Atuforsin, also spoke on behalf of the new ministers, pledging to work hard to make John Mahama the best president of the Fourth Republic.
Mr. President, we have been with you throughout your days in opposition. we have witnessed the misgovernance and misrule of the previous administration. We've learned, indeed, that Ghanaians will not tolerate such misgovernance any longer. We've taken a cue from what you've just told us. We want to assure you that we'll serve in such a way to make you the best president in the Fourth Republic.
Now, also, let's take you back to Parliament, because the MPP minority in Parliament are tonight taking John Mahama to the cleaners, accusing him of abandoning the presidential private jet. John Mahama has been criticized by the MPP over his use of his brother Ibrahim Mahama's private jet since he assumed office. Although the government has explained that the use of the jet has come at no cost to the state, the MPP says it is offensive and must stop immediately.
I'm just here to correct something that the Honorable Chief Whip made or said. Nothing more, nothing less. First of all, he said Akufo-Addo has not traveled on commercial aircraft. I want to say that President Akufo-Addo has traveled on numerous occasions on the same Emirates before. In fact, on some of the occasions, he went to Honorable Asenso. He's here. You can verify for him. I have the privilege as Minister for Defense to always be at the airport when the President is traveling, and your Minister will do same, so I have the records. In fact, I am aware that the President has traveled to the UK numerous times on British Airways. We always have to be there between 10 and 11 for him to go. I'm aware that the President had to travel on Qatar Airways numerous times. So I'm just giving that information to Parliament and to the House. The second thing I want to correct is that President Akufo-Addo has not rented any private jet to travel within the country. West Africa, yes. Outside West Africa, yes. But in the country, no. Current jet is serviceable. It can move. It is working. It is wrong for the President of the Republic to be going on commercial jets when the jet that Ghana used their money to pay for and buy is available and it's working.
The majority in Parliament says the MPP's concerns are unfounded, according to Majority Chief Whip and incoming Roads and Minister Kwame Govins Agbeja. The MPP, which supervised former President Akufo-Addo's use of expensive rented jet, cannot claim to care about John Mahama's use of a jet which is at no cost to the state.
For information, President Mahama traveled on commercial flight. Unlike, yes. Let me make it extra clear to you. He went on a commercial flight. Unlike the former president who rented private jets even when he's going within the country. President Mahama has never, since he took office, rented and used Ghana government money to pay for any flight. That is the difference between our former president and the current president. Mr. Speaker, it is very, very rich of the former defense minister who sat there and President Akufo-Addo traveled on countless occasions on very expensive private jets, is today telling us that our jet is fit for purpose. So how come you couldn't put the former president on the same jet flight? Immediately you left office, the jet has become serviceable. Very, very rich.
Former Roads and Highways Minister Francis Asenso-Boakye is calling for urgent bipartisan effort to end post-election violence in Ghana. For decades, Ghana has always recorded issues of electoral violence, leading to dozens of deaths, with party supporters taking over key state installations after their party is declared winner of an election. Now, delivering a statement on the floor of Parliament, Francis Asenso-Boakye described the occurrences as troubling.
To safeguard our democracy and deter future occurrence of such unacceptable acts, I urge this House to consider a review of our legislative framework to impose stricter penalties and punitive measures on those who engage in unlawful conduct, including beneficiaries of their actions. Such measures will reaffirm our commitment to the rule of law and protect the integrity of our democratic process.
Well, reacting to this statement on the floor, First Deputy Minority Whip Habib Idrisu described the NDC as a party which always supports post-election violence. He charged the NDC to change from its revolutionary ways.
It should not be the case that wherever there is a change of power from one political party to the other, we should experience election violence. It should not be the case. But our colleagues, from the way and their posture, is suggesting that whatever is going on in the country, they are in full support of it. And it is normal, and it is something they are encouraging their people to do. Mr. Speaker, I want to call on the youth of this country. I want to call on the youth of this country that as a matter of fact and agencies, if they are encouraged by any political player or any political leader to involve or get involved in this act, must stop immediately.
But Deputy Majority Whip Comfort Doyo Kujo fight back, asking the MPP to hold a mirror up to themselves. She described the MPP as rather the party that condones electoral violence, recounting remarks made by some figures of the party.
For each and everyone to go and look into the mirror to see who are the perpetrators when it comes to violence. Mr. Speaker, violence started in this country when we were going to do the Etiwa by-elections. That is where we saw serious violence in this country. Etiwa Yechire Bibi Kakra, we have 2 balls. All die be die. That is what sparked the youth at that time, and they realized that, look, let us all involve ourselves in this violence because even our leaders are examples.
We wrap up Prime today. It was a special edition of Prime because of the vetting from Parliament. We were grateful to Pepsodent as well. Remember to brush your teeth day and night before you go to bed and when you're about to set off for work with Pepsodent, because with Pepsodent, remember, you know, all that matters is smell, and because Pepsodent enables you to smell. So go in and get Pepsodent to help you out smell better. My name is Samuel Kojo Brace. There's more on myjoyline.com. Good evening.
A great evening to you and a warm welcome to Prime Business with me, Pius Kojo Baka. In our very first story, President John Dramani Mahama has urged Finance Minister Dr. Kaseola Tuforsen to work at controlling inflation and bringing Ghana's debt to sustainable levels. Speaking after swearing in 6 ministers approved by Parliament, President John Mahama entreated the ministers to work to improve the living conditions of Ghanaians.
I've just sworn you in the first 6 ministers who are responsible for perhaps the most critical sectors of our national life, especially the economy and the energy sector. In economy, the people of Ghana are looking up to you. Dr. Forson to reduce inflation and make life more affordable, reduce the cost of living. They're looking up to you to bring our debt level to sustainable, to bring our national debt to sustainable levels. They're looking to you to stabilize our currency, and they're looking to you to rein in the deficit so that we can achieve macroeconomic stability.
He also called on the Energy Minister, John Jinapor, to find prudent solutions to address challenges in the energy sector.
To you, the Honorable Minister of Energy, Mr. John Ablai Jinapor, Ghanaians are looking for stable and efficient power supply. They are looking to you to accelerate our upstream and downstream petroleum sectors in order that Ghanaians can reap the benefit of the potential that God has given us. They're also looking to you to manage the energy sector debt and be able to remove it as an albatross around the neck of our economy.
Now, the Minister of Trade, Agribusiness and Industry designate, Elizabeth Ufosue-Jare, has stated that the 24-hour economy policy will be used to solve challenges encountered in the implementation of the One District, One Factory program rolled out by the former government. Appearing before Parliament's Appointment Committee earlier this morning, Madam Ufosue-Jare pointed out that the program is good but had many challenges that must be corrected to make the policy effective.
Companies have not proceeded the way the government intention it to be. Again, even though government supported them with some inputs, they lack capital. And because of lack of access to capital, they've not been able to do their work as expected of them. And if you look at the other 1D, 1F companies that signed on to the program, their major challenge is the fact that you recall, Honorable Chair, that government capped their interest rate at 20%, and government promised to pay 10% for them, which was a very good program. But somewhere along the line, the interest rate shot to 35%. So now the problem the companies have is who pays the difference of 15%, because they have already sold their products calculated at an interest of 10%. And one thing government has also not been able to do is to pay the extra 10% that it promised these manufacturers. They also have the issue of raw materials, and we know that issue of raw material availability did not start today. It's been there for long, and it has worried our industry. That is why our industries have not grown to the levels we want. So these are the challenges of the 1D, 1F, but there is always a solution to problems. It is good that it has started. Now that we know the challenges, how are we going to solve it going forward? I see the solution in the 24-hour economy. Because, Honorable Chair, in the 24-hour economy, businesses are going to receive incentives. In the 24-hour economy, agribusiness is going to play a key role. And in the agribusiness role, we are going to do commercial contract farming. The commercial contract farming is going to solve the raw materials problem to a very large extent. In so doing, these factories that have signed on the 1D, 1F, I'm sure will sign on the 24-hour economy and get a benefit of the raw material availability. They'll get the benefit of the tax holidays. They'll get the benefit of the stimulus packages they will get. And I think that it is Ghana. These industries are not political. They are looking for what a country can do for them. What the NPP did for them, they have taken it. What the NDC will add to them will make them even better.
Well, she is also optimistic about improving Ghana's trade balance by adding value to the nation's raw materials before export. She shared these during the ministerial vetting in Parliament.
We have to work on the production of raw materials in this country. I have indicated that under the agribusiness, we are going to do contract commercial farming, and it's going to make available raw materials in Ghana. If we get raw materials in Ghana, two things will happen. Firstly, our importation of the raw materials will reduce, and we know what happens to our trade balance when we are importing more. When we are, importing less. And so, when we have raw materials in Ghana and we import less, it will be good for us. Two, the raw materials coming into this country are what give us the problem with our foreign exchange. So that one also be catered for. Once we have the raw materials in the country, the essence is value addition. So when we add value to our raw materials, it will also decrease the number of the finished product that we import. So the import will reduce in two folds. The import of raw materials will decrease. The import of the finished product will also decrease because we'll be having them in country. With the 24-hour economy again, more production will happen and our exports will improve. If we are exporting more, it shows that we are getting more foreign exchange. Again, we have, these are in respect of non-traditional exports. We also be looking at adding value to our traditional exports like cocoa and gold, because since time immemorial, we've been exporting our raw beans. With agri-processing, we can process our gold in two folds, semi-processed and then final process. We can have the semi-processed materials by, for example, if you have cocoa, adding value to make it powder, exporting it for same to be used for chocolate or drinks. We can also add value to a finished product like chocolate. And so if we are now adding value to our traditional exports, in addition to our non-traditional exports, you know what will happen to our export numbers. That is how I seek to improve our trade balance.
So is reducing the import of raw materials the best bet of solving the agribusiness industry challenges? Let's have some statistics on that. And my colleague Isaac Atasenyako joins me in studio to help us understand all of this. Isaac, thanks so much for joining me on Prime Business.
Welcome, Pius.
First off, break it down for us. What is the figure looking like when we have the raw materials for imports?
Now, let's move straight to the slide, Pius. Now, if we look at this slide, you realize this is a trend showing a percentage of agric raw materials or imports of agric raw materials to our total import. Now, let's look at this from 2017, 2018, 2019. Now, we see that 2020 is missing. Now, this spike we have here accounts for 2020. Now, clearly within that whole period of COVID where the lockdown happened, a lot did not happen. And so we're not able to produce much, but rather rely on foreign imports. Now, this continued, well, sort of declined a bit in 2021, and then it dipped down further in 2022, but we saw another surge in 2023. Now, in 2022, we all know what happened. Russia declaring war on Ukraine. Now, this led to another spike in the increase in raw materials exportation, importation actually. Now, why this is important is because now a country like Russia, for instance, one of the high producing countries for cereals. Now, we rely on a lot of cereals here in our country. Now, if we look at something like flour, for instance, the bread we eat, the biscuits we consume, now when you come to our factories also, they rely on a lot of these raw materials. Let's look at sugar products, sugarcane, for instance. We all know what happened to the Commander Sugar Factory, having to, stall its rollout because of the lack of raw materials. Now, sugar is also very essential. It forms as adjectives to a lot of the food juices we have here, as a sweetener, as a base, for a lot of, food products we have on the market. Fruits, for instance. Now, some of these companies produce by specification. And so if we are not able to get the right specification for, let's say, pineapple, for instance, a confit juice may not be able to produce because it exports to other countries, the EU countries for that matter. And so if a confit juice does not get that, fruit or the specification of fruits needed here in Ghana, it may have to import. And all of these accounted for what we see here. We'll move on to the next slide now.
And I'm interested in the cost.
Yes, so averagely, it costs us about $33.4 million. This was computed between 2017 to about 2022. Now, this is how the figure is looking like on how much we spend on, the importation of agric raw materials. But you know what's interesting here, Pius? Moving on to the next slide. Now, this raw material sourcing composition, just 10% of our raw materials are sourced here in Ghana, 90% imported. Now, the actions or inactions of the minister designate now, Elizabeth Ofosu-Adjei for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry, would have a lot to do here to improve this percentage. Now, a lot of the things she said seems to be very good. I mean, you and I have had this conversation in the office, engaged a lot of industry people, and the question is always how. Now, if she's able to implement all the things she said, hopefully in the next couple of years, we should be seeing some appreciation when it comes to sourcing of raw materials for our industries, or agric raw materials for our industries locally. And so hopefully the next time I should be here, we should see an increase in here. But to the next slide again.
Is that feasible, really?
It's very feasible. I mean, a lot of people have said in the past that we've not been intentional enough. And also with regards to, you know, some hands in government, you know, not willing to take certain decisions because some people benefit from the current system we have here. But it's very feasible. I mean, countries like Malaysia have been able to do it. They started just like us. We're even better than them just when we had independence. And so it's very feasible. Now, let's look at this figure. $100 million, the cost of sourcing from here in Ghana, and then $350 million sourcing from elsewhere. Now, what this means is that if we're able to improve on growing raw materials here, we'll be adding more to our economy. And so in the next couple of years, hopefully, we won't be seeing $100 million on the slide. We'll be seeing something, let's say, more than this, say about 300 million. Now, what that means is that it adds to our economy, the value chain, for instance. All actors within the value chain will begin to benefit from this. We always say that agric has the potential to grow, Pius. And if we're able to put in the right measures, the right policies, we should see our economy grow, and our agric sector, for that matter, grow. And once agric grows, I mean, we depend on a lot on food, on maize, cereals, and others. And once agric grows, it's going to have that ripple effect on other parts of the economy.
All right, Isaac, thank you so much for joining me in studio for that thorough breakdown for us in relation to the numbers when it comes to our importation of raw materials. Well, thankfully, joining me now is the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana, Anthony Morrison. He joins us via phone. Anthony, thanks so much for joining me on Prime Business. I'm grateful you could join me once more. Now, you may have watched the Minister Designate for Trade and Industry, Elizabeth Ofosue-Jare, and I want to know your impressions so far. But unfortunately, it seems we've lost Anthony Morrison. As and when we bring him on, we shall speak to him on the subject matter. But let's touch on the story before we go to Anthony. Tax analyst Francis Timoboy is urging the newly appointed Commissioner of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Anthony Sapong, to focus on improving compliance in the collection of taxes. According to him, despite the authority meeting its revenue target, improving compliance will help rake in more revenue rather than introducing new tax handles.
Currently, businesses are saying that taxes are too many in this country. And so even as much as the government is saying that they're not going to introduce new taxes, my fear is that if we attempt to introduce any new taxes, there may be a backlash. So the expectation is that he should focus more on the compliance, as the Minister of Finance has already stated. If we focus on enforcing the existing taxes, I believe that he'll be able to maintain the momentum that the Ghana Revenue Authority is, achieving. Over the years, you realize that from 2020, they've been able to achieve their revenue target and sometimes even going beyond it. Any attempt to introduce new taxes are likely to be met with stiff opposition from the business community.
Apart from compliance, which other areas should he focus on?
No, I think some of the tax handles we've left very untouched. If you look at the 153 billion cedis that the JRA says they've achieved, the last time I checked, you realize that some tax handles which are contributing so much include rent taxes. Rent tax is something that the JRA sometimes they don't even budget for it because the revenue that they collect from that place is very small. But this time it's coming in a lot. So.
All right, so I want us to go back to our earlier story in relation to the importation of raw materials and, of course, the appearance of the Minister Designate for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry, Elizabeth Ofosue-Jare. But joining us via phone now is the Chief Executive of the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana, Anthony Morrison. Anthony, thanks so much once again for joining us on Prime Business. And you have called for the consolidation of agribusiness in the scheme of government's policies, etc. Now, the Minister Designate for Trade, Agribusiness and Industry appeared before the appointment committee earlier this morning. Your impression?
Well, thank you, Pius. I think this was a very good vetting process. Just that the industry was expecting more from our parliamentarians to ask more leading questions, especially what is pertaining to the industry, the ease of doing business, issues with institutional alignment of government, and how to make a very innovative programs which will have a more impact on the SME and also on the private sector. First, we're looking at her area of the proposal she put up, which of course inviting the private sector on board. But we need to take this discussion to a bigger level. Agribusiness has now been added to MOTI. We need now to make the industrialization aspect more intentional. How do we tease out the agribusiness in a way that will see the relevance and its activities that will impact on the industry? And this is where the Chamber is calling for the establishment of the Agribusiness and Industry Development Regulatory Authority. This is where we will have in line or align all the other parameters. The value chain analysis will be done based on the institutionalization of the Raw Material Council, where we will actually look at all the raw materials that we have in Ghana in commercial sense and look at the priorities of this country and sort to do a better analysis, align them to the national market or the domestic market, and also in terms of the global market. In doing so, we'll be creating more jobs, we'll be establishing more factories, and we'll also be uplifting a lot of people from poverty and giving them a social class. So there are a number of things that need to be put in its right perspective for it to make meaningful analysis to the general public.
All right, so for us here, we are really concerned about the, importation of raw materials, which we are looking at reducing that. But for you, what pragmatic steps would you propose that we need to take a look at to reduce the import of raw materials in order to boost the agribusiness industry?
So one of the issues that I said is to set up the Raw Material Council here in Ghana. Most of the raw materials we import is because we have not properly aligned the raw material availability of the country to feed the industry. So what do? You look at how you can do a more better agro-industrialization. I have always believed in the private sector, large-scale commercial farming to coexist with the small-scale farmer processes. So we need to find a way where in each region, at least, we can count between 2,000 to 5,000 of commercial farms. And let's not get it mixed. Tractorization and mechanization are quite different things. So we need to see a system that is actually being set up, that is providing for the industries and the factories.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Anthony Morrison, Chief Executive of the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana, for your input at this very moment. And that's it for Prime Business for today. I am Pius Kojo Baka. Let's connect same time tomorrow.
Hi there, welcome to Prime Sports with me, Razak Musbao. Now, Member of Parliament for Buem constituency, Honorable Kofi Adams, has promised to ensure a holistic growth of the sports sector if approved by Parliament as Minister for the Ministry of Sports and Recreation following his nomination by President John Mahama. According to him, despite the importance of football to Ghana, it is equally essential to ensure adequate funding and growth of other sports and disciplines to help in the overall development of the country. Well, he's been speaking exclusively to Joy Sports, Fentio, Tahiru Fentio.
Sports and Recreation Minister Designate, the Honourable Member of Parliament for BM constituency, Kofi Adams. Honourable, first of all, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
Did you see that coming? I mean, people say that there was a lot of lobbying involved, and I would tell you that among the sports fraternity, people were quite surprised to see your name. What's been the reaction like since yesterday?
Well, it's the same thing has occurred to me from many courtesies, because they didn't expect that it should be me. I'm not one of the real faces of sports when it comes to even my political party, the National Democratic Congress. But you see, where the leader sits, he sees what everybody has. And depending on the agenda that he has as a leader, he will think that at this moment, this is the person that can do the trick. It's like a coach, a technical person sitting at the bench and watching a match. They do some substitutions. Sometimes you who have not followed the start of the game to the point of the substitution may not understand. But he has read the game and realized that, no, this is the person that when I take out and bring this one, the game will go the way I have always wanted to play it earlier that I'm not getting. So His Excellency the President knows what it is that he set out to do for the Sports and Recreation Ministry and feels that, well, I'm the best fit for that role now. And I've accepted it willingly. I've accepted a challenge. And I think that together with all stakeholders, when we have done with the vetting processes, we will engage and see how the vision of His Excellency the President will materialize.
And obviously, I don't want to preempt what will happen because you're yet to go through the vetting. So I want to focus a bit more on yourself. For those that don't know who you are or that you have an interest in sports, can you just tell us a bit more about your sporting interest?
Well, I must say I have a diverse sporting interest. But of course, as a child growing up, my dad was a horse farm. And you see, the only time we got to oppose him was only the football hour. So almost all his kids turns up supporting Kotoko so that we could oppose him. And interestingly, when it gets to that time, then he'll be giving you assignment. The day Hearts doesn't do well against Kotoko, or even they are playing against any other team that we wish that they lose. When they lose, then expect a lot of assignments for you. So you cannot be together to tease him. So in one way or the other, that was how I became a Kotoko fan. But when you move out of Ghana, of course, Chelsea is being a dream team. Not forgetting that Man U too has hung there in one way or the other as the old lady that you wish well sometimes. And I really enjoy various forms of sport. But of course, boxing is the big one for me. I remember those times when we had the likes of Azuma, the I, Curtis, and then the rest boxing. You have to stay awake. And I will not sleep. Not that type of not sleep because you have drunk coffee or those kind of things. No. I will do things to keep awake just so to be able to watch from the beginning, from the base promotional fights all the way to the penultimate fight that will happen that night. And so boxing is for me the main thing. I've heard people say that because I said I love boxing, maybe I will ignore football. Or no, it's not going to be like that. Once confirmed, we want to see every aspect of sports grow. And together with the stakeholders like you, we will do it. I say sports is lucky. Sports is one thing that every day we get free mention on virtually every platform. So why are we not growing? Why are we not getting the right funding for sports? Is it the case that maybe we are not engaging those who are doing the meshing the way we should engage them so that the meshing will be appropriate? We need to sit together and see that so that we can utilize that free time that we get. We don't pay for it. All stations, sometimes a day, if you don't get maybe some 20, 30 minutes, you will get it dedicated for sports. If you add morning, what happens in the morning and in the afternoons? So how can we put this together to generate the necessary interest that will draw more love and more support to the sporting and recreational sector? So we'll be sitting down after we go through the processes to see how we utilize this. And I know you guys are willing because you all want that industry to grow. Because if it doesn't grow, you also don't grow. So with that understanding, I believe that we will sit together and then work things out to be able to grow.
One last one. I know that you obviously, once you go through the vetting and you take the office, you will assess the situation and see what's going on in the office and all of that. But since the announcement or even the process leading to the announcement, what has been your preoccupation? What's been the thing that's occupied your mind a lot about the sports ministry that you think, you know what, in the last few hours since leading to the announcement, this is one thing that has consumed you a lot?
Well, I know there's been malnourished and funding in the sports industry, maybe except one area, said Black Stars. All others don't get the funding. So I've been thinking about how to get reliable, stable funding sources for all other sports, whilst we still do something for Black Stars, because it is the big thing. Whether we like it or not, that remains the big thing. So it must get its fair share of the funding. But even for that one to succeed very well in terms of long to medium-term objective, we need to go back also to the grassroots sports. In terms of even the academicals and what have you, the inter-schools that we use, the school sports, we need to begin to look at it. And I will be sitting with my colleague, Minister for Education, once I get confirmed, for us to see even how we can reintroduce school sports and get the sports ministry to run school sports, whilst GES continue to teach the physical education as a subject in the classroom. But in terms of school sports, organizing it, the sports ministry can take up that responsibility. And we will engage and see how funding, when the GET fund is decapped, how a portion of the GET fund can be allocated into a sports fund to fund some of these activities. So talent hunting would come from. The reason why, from my observation, Black Stars takes a chunk of the budget is that we don't grow it from the base. Yeah. And because of that, we have not been able to build a strong local teams. We spend so much to bring our professionals from far away in terms of ticketing and even accommodation. And so you spend heavily on that and less on even equipment for their proper training. So if we invest in these grassroots sports and we invest in our local sports and we invest in our local teams and local league, and it becomes so competitive and strong, you can have a very reliable set of local players that can partner a strong pool that you will not end up spending so much. So we are looking at this as long-term, but we will sit with those who run the sports, the stakeholders, and see the best way out. But these have been things that have preoccupied my mind. But immediately, the qualifying series for the World Cup will start in March, and so we must begin to think about where we will get money to finance those processes. So the GFA will have to bring their estimates, and when confirmed, and I will engage the Office of the Chief of Staff and others to make sure that funding is made available to pursue that project. That's one of the immediate projects that we would have to be pursuing. And this becomes very necessary also because we did not qualify for the African Cup, so we will not be having opportunity to even try our players. So we need to spend some time also putting them together to prepare them for these qualifiers. And so we will look at it and see what God does in this short term.
Obviously, the biggest thing for John Mahama's administration, the biggest promise that you made in your manifesto is that you are going to give allowances to Ghana Premier League players. A lot of people are thinking about that. And I'm glad that you mentioned the issue of funding, because that could potentially be the game changer. But how, is that something that is achievable?
Well, it's achievable. It's achievable. That's what I'm saying. When we all come together and discuss what we think has affected our various sports fields and the funding thing that I talk about, the next question that we will be answering will be, how do we put money in the fund to take care of all these situations that we think when it is done, it will help the industry grow. So we'll see. I've suggested one way of the existing funds that we can take a percentage. There's this Assembly Common Fund also that has been funding some sports intervention facilities and what have you. Can we have it properly formalized so that another percentage also goes into that fund? Which other sources? The private sector that will be willing, if they know that they put in, they will get mentioned and they will get promoted and what have you. Will they come on board? So we will look at a lot of sources. Look, sports is big money for us. There's so much money to make from sports. And it's the initial investments that we need. Once we do that and the love comes around, there is a lot of economy around sports. A lot of economy, formal and informal economy around sports that this country will benefit from. So we have to start from somewhere. But I believe that we will do it together. It's not about me, it's not about His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, but it is about all of us. All of us must see it as our objective.
Part of it. And we've got more stories for you on myjoyonline.com/sports. Well, up next is PM Express. Please do stay tuned.